Hi, for this video what I want to do is show you how to find the approximate sample mean, variance, and standard deviation of the frequency distribution using Excel. So I'm going to use Excel to help us find this. You do need to know the formulas in order to find this in Excel. So the sample mean, which is denoted by X bar, so just in case you're not familiar with the symbols, this is X bar, and anytime you are finding the sample mean, that is the symbol that you are going to use. In order to find it, what you are going to do is you are going to find the sum of your X values. In this case, my X values are going to be the midpoints of my frequency distribution times the frequency of each of those categories. So F just represents the frequency divided by N, where N is equal to the sum of the frequency. So just in case you're not familiar, this is sigma notation, and sigma, anytime you see this, it just means to find the sum of those values. The sample variance is the standard deviation squared. So just remember that the standard deviation is the square root of the variance, or the variance is the standard deviation squared. So I'm going to find this one using the formula, the sample variance, and then I will just take the square root of that answer to get the sample standard deviation. Okay, so basically what this formula is telling us is that we're going to find each of our values, X. So that's again going to be our midpoint. So midpoint is going to be our X. And then we're going to subtract the sample mean from each of the values, and then we're going to square it, and we're going to find the sum of the products. So again, I can just use Excel to find all of these values, and I can just plug this formula in. Okay, so I will show you guys how to do that, and then like I said, the sample standard deviation is just the square root of the variance. Okay, so I actually already have set up these values in Excel. Basically, this is my lower limit, and this is my upper limit. The midpoint is going to be the lower limit plus the upper limit divided by 2. And what I typically do is I'll find the midpoint of the first one by doing the 20 plus 24 divided by 2. And then I will just use the class width. The class width is what you add to get to the next lower limit. So I can just find the difference of any two consecutive classes. So 25 minus 20 would give me 5. So I can just, once I find the first midpoint, add 5 to each of those to get the next midpoints. So like I said, I'm going to use Excel to help with these calculations. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up Excel. And as you can see, I've already typed in the lower limits, the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45. And then I already typed in the upper limits, 24, 29, 34, 39, 44, and 49. So to find the midpoint, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and use the formula equals, and I'm going to select the lower limit plus the upper limit. Make sure to put parentheses around that sum, otherwise you're going to get the wrong answer, and you're going to just divide that by 2. So 22 is the midpoint, and then I'm just going to use the class width. So again, remember we found that the class width was 5. So I'm just going to say that I want to take this value plus 5, and it will give me the next one. I can then drag that down because I did plus 5. It will take the previous cell and add 5 to it, and then I can automatically get all of my midpoints. Okay, so it's very fast if you're using Excel to help you find the midpoints. And then we're going to use C2 through C7 and D2 through D7 for all of our calculations. It's really important when you are doing this in Excel that you pay attention to where your cells are. We always have the column denoted by a letter and the rows by a number. So like this one is cell C2, this is D2, etc. Okay, so we're going to use the formula. Like I said, we're going to use the formula for the sample mean. So let me come back to this page and move it up so I can see the formula a little bit better. All right, so the formula is the sum product of our X value, which is the midpoint, and our frequency. So in Excel, we actually have the sum product as a command. So I can find the sum and the product. I just have to tell which cells I want to use. So I want to use my midpoint values, and then I'm going to say comma, and you can see the values up here. I know it's kind of hard to see. Let me move it over just a tad. All right, and then I'm going to highlight my frequency, so the sum product C2 through C7, and then I'm going to highlight my frequencies and close my parentheses, and I need to divide it by n. Well, remember, n is the sum of my frequencies, so I'm just going to do divided by so I'm going to do divided by the sum, and if you wanted to, you could find the sum of your frequencies and put that number in instead if you would like to, but I'm just going to use the formula. Okay, so this matches our formula. It's the sum product of our midpoint times our frequency divided by the sum of our frequencies. So remember, n is just the sum of our frequencies. And then when I hit enter, it will automatically give me the mean. So I would put that my x bar, or my sample mean, is 32.4. Okay, the sample variance, we're going to use the next formula, which is a little bit more complicated. Okay, so remember that you can see the command up here in the formula bar in case it does go off the screen. So, and I can make this smaller and then it'll move it over. There we'll be able to see it better and I can see the formula at the same time. All right, so we're going to type this equals, and again, we're going to use the sum product. I just double clicked on that. Okay, and then it's going to ask me what values. Well, the first one that we want is our frequency. So that's these values. And then I'm going to put a comma. And now I want to actually put in this formula here. So I want to put in my values. So I'm going to do an open parenthesis. I'm going to highlight my x values. Okay, and I want to subtract those all by the same value. I want to subtract the mean from all of those values. So what I can do is I can come up here and I can select the mean. Okay, so I just did all of my x values, the midpoint, minus the mean, and then I need to square that. So in order to square it, you use the caret key, which is above the 6. So if you hit Shift and 6, you will get the caret key, which will tell us to do an exponent, and I would say squared. So it's the sum product of the frequencies times the difference between x and the sample mean squared. And then don't forget to close your parenthesis. Okay, and then we're going to divide it by n minus 1. And here's where it might have been easier for me to find my sum of my frequency down here, but I can still use the same formula. Remember that n is just going to be our sum of our frequencies. So I'm going to take the sum of the frequencies, but with these, I want to subtract 1 from that sum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to enter -1 or subtract 1. So I want to find the sum of these values, but then I want to subtract 1 from that sum, and that will give me my sample variance. So the symbol for this, since it's sample variance, would be s squared, and so that ends up being 45.6 repeated. And then the standard deviation is easy, because remember that it is just the square root of the variance, so I don't have to try to type in the formula again. I can just find the square root of my variance and then hit enter, and it gives me 6.7577. And then just make sure that you round to whatever decimal place you are told to round to. I know some homework platforms are very picky about how many places to round to, so make sure you read each question carefully. So again, in order to do this, you do have to know the formulas. So the sample variance, my formula was the sum product of wherever my frequencies are, comma, wherever my midpoint is, minus wherever I put my sample mean, divided by the sum of my frequencies minus 1. So that's what this formula did here. You do have to be very careful about making sure you open and close parentheses, because if you do not put the parentheses in the correct place, you will get the wrong answer. And remember that for the mean, it's the sum product of my midpoint and my frequency divided by the sum of my frequencies. As always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. If there are additional topics that you would like me to cover, please let me know that as well.